Welcome to the Way Out Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sharits, and I'd like to say a happy Monday to everyone. And I would especially like to give out a big shout out to Lori at KHTS, because today is, pay attention, Metal Monday. And she and I both completed our Santa Clarita Marathon, full marathon yesterday. Great job, Lori. She reminds me when I do these races that it's Metal Monday, and so we both sported that, and we'll put up a couple of pictures later on our respective Facebook pages to show everyone how I was going to say bad bleep we are, but I'll just say awesome that Lori is, and so a happy Monday to everyone, and all of you who were out there at the Santa Clarita Marathon doing the 5K, 10K, half marathon, or full marathon. Happy Metal Monday to you. And, Monday sometimes gets a bad rap, I think, traditionally, and so one of the things that I like to do is remind everyone to take a moment at the beginning of the week. And right now, if you're on your lunch break or you have an opportunity to step outside, put your face up to this bright, shining sunshine and feel that breeze out there in this wonderful weather, and take a moment to separate yourself from any angst or stress or worry for the upcoming things that you have to do this week, and turn those around into what great opportunities we have to interact with all the beautiful people in our life, to be able to help anybody that we can, and to just enjoy this wonderful life that we've been given, and to sit back and think about all the things that you have to be grateful for. Even if things aren't going your way, there's a lot to be grateful for, and oftentimes we forget to take an opportunity to see those. I saw a thing recently, and it said gratitude turns what we have into enough. And if we take the moments to get grateful and remember that, then we can save ourselves from a lot of angst and worry and stress and unneeded feelings that we don't want to have. The Way Out Recovery Hour is every Monday on AM 1220 or FM 98.1. You can also find us on Facebook at the Way Out Recovery SCV Facebook page, or go to KHTS Radio Facebook page. Please remember to download the KHTS app. It is free on your smart device or tablet, and you can get updates that are happening throughout the day, great music, and wonderful shows like this. You can also go to our website. The Way Out Recovery is an intensive outpatient program located here in Santa Clarita on the corner of Plum and Bouquet Canyon. Our physical address is 28118 Bouquet Canyon. We are in the same shopping center as the Vincenzo's. There's a La Casina in there. There's a 7-Eleven, and we're down at the other end on the same side as 7-Eleven. So drop on by and let us know how you're doing. If you need some help, we'd be happy to help you. If you or someone you love is struggling with substance abuse or mental health issues, we absolutely will sit down and take the time to help you either get enrolled in our program or find you a program that fits for you or your loved one. Our website is thewayoutrocoveryscv.com, and our phone number is 661-296-4444. Again, 296-4444. Give us a call. We'd love to help you. I have, interesting. I try to always have guests on here, and today I was figured I would just fly solo. I had this sort of, as I was out there running yesterday, and I run quite a few races, but every one of them is a different experience. And, there's a point between mile 20 and mile 25 when I'm out there and I've been beating my body up and I'm tired and I get real introspective. And I was sort of thinking about what a big deal it is for anybody who toes the line at those types of races or any kind of really activity. If you have the ability to get up and get out and do something for yourself physically, you are an incredible human being. And if you're thinking about doing that and you haven't been able to get yourself to do that, you can. Anybody has the ability to do it. And it is one of the most profound things that's happened not only in my recovery, but certainly in my life. And I was thinking about how much that coincides with the recovery process. You know, there are a lot of similarities in being able to get up and achieve a goal or plan and execute a goal in my life that really coincide with being able to get up and have a good peace of mind and a great attitude and be able to, first and foremost, stay clean and sober on this very day. And so there's a lot of the tools that are crossovers. So what I want to do today is I'm going to go through really kind of a formula or a plan, a way to stay clean and sober. But as I'm doing that, you're going to see that it also contains principles that you can apply to just about any goal in your life, but certainly if you want to get out and get into some kind of physical activity. And so, you know, recovery is, I've said this many times, and I can't necessarily say it enough in the world that we live in today. We live in a time in history when drugs are more powerful, more available, and more deadly than they ever have been. They're accessible to everybody. They're everywhere. And it's really, really a shame that we live in that world where they're so sought after and also so dangerous. But on the flip side of that, we also live in a point in history where treatment and recovery and support is more available and more accessible and more effective than it's ever been in history. And so anybody who desires a change in their life, especially in the recovery process, at least in my world, can do that. Recovery is available to everyone. Anyone can do it. There are no exceptions to that if you do what people have been doing in front of you. And, you know, we've got a pretty successful model for recovery. We've got a lot of people that are willing to help each other. And so I want to give you a little insight into what you can do if you're struggling, what you can do if you want to be in the recovery process, if you want to stay clean and sober, and if you just want to make overall quality of life improvements around you, such as maybe running a marathon or something like that. So I'll be back after this break, and we will get straight into that. I'm Bob Sharits. This is the Way Out Recovery Hour. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
The best live theater can be found right here in the Santa Clarita Valley. The Canyon Theater Guild has been entertaining audiences for decades with top-quality musicals and plays. Located on Main Street in Old Town Newhall, CTG also offers workshops for the young actor in your family. For more information, call the box office at 799-2702 or go online to canyontheater.org.
Hi, Kirk Stinson here with Plumbing by Kirk, your hometown plumber, here to let you know that it's sometimes more cost-effective to have Plumbing by Kirk fix it than to have your husband wrestle with those plumbing problems. And if you play your cards right, you might not have to let him know that we were even there.
We invite you to visit our website for free plumbing advice at plumbingbyKirk.com or give us a call, 263-6519. That's 263-6519.
My dad is the best plumber ever. Plumbing by Kirk.
What if you could wake up without the burden of owing over $10,000 in taxes to the IRS or state? Call the trusted name in tax resolution, Anthem Tax Services, 866-630-2694. With over 30 years of experience in tax preparation and tax law, we are ready to negotiate your tax debt and reach a settlement that makes sense for you.
Anthem saved me nearly $17,000 and settled my debt with the IRS for just $100.
Call 866-630-2694. We are the only company that is confident enough in our services to offer a 100% money-back guarantee if we can't put you in a better position than where you started. All you need to do is call for a free consultation. 866-630-2694. You may even qualify to save up to 99% off your tax debt. Call Anthem today and we'll also take care of your tax case study for free, saving you hundreds of dollars. 866-630-2694. 866-630-2694.
Your hometown station, KHTS.
I got no excuses.
Welcome back to the Way Out Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sharits, and if you are just joining us, you are listening on either AM 1220 or FM 98.1, or you could be listening on the free KHTS app, and if you don't have that, go ahead and download that on your tablet or smartphone or smart device. I think you can download it on multiple platforms or something like that. So download that app. It's free. You can get you'll get updates and weather and news and all the cool stuff that they do on KHTS radio as well. If you want to follow along with us live, we post live on KHTS Radio Facebook every week, as well as the Way Out Recovery SCV Facebook page too. And if you haven't gone in there and if you don't follow those, go ahead and go into Facebook and follow KHTS Radio and the Way Out Recovery SCV. Prior to the break, so I want to give one more shout out. The Santa Clarita has been putting on a marathon for a long time now. I'm not going to say how many years because I don't know, but I want to say about 26 or 7. Maybe I could be wrong on that. But for a very long time, and they put on a quality event, and it was a really, it's really an amazing course. We live in in an area that's just incredibly beautiful. The weather was perfect yesterday. Didn't get too hot. The little breeze was blowing, so it was wonderful. And I can't say enough about the quality of the event and the way that the city of Santa Clarita shows up. As I was out there running at some of the aid stations, I saw many of the city's the people who work for the city actually volunteering and manning those events. And so I saw my people from Drug-Free Youth and SCV out there. Big shout out to them. I saw my people from the Newhall Community Center out there volunteering. Big shout out to them. And I saw two of my favorite people that I have on the show a couple of times a year, Tom and Alice Reynolds, who are very much involved in the Youth Grove over there at Central Park. They were out there volunteering, pointing the right direction, and directing us. And it's funny when I run by those people that are directing me which way to go. I oftentimes will say to them, "I would be lost without you," because I don't know. I just get into the thing and keep on running, and so. But the city of Santa Clarita puts on an amazing event. And so a big shout out to anybody who's sporting a medal on Medal Monday, or anybody who towed the line yesterday. At whatever level you are at in your activity, it is one of the most important things that you can do for yourself. There are a lot of different tools that we give to people in recovery, and a couple of them are changes in diet and exercise, and changes in activity. I said exercise, but activity. It's really, really important. I saw a study one time that said that physical activity is the number one most effective treatment for all mental health issues. And so if you can get up and walk for 30 minutes a day or whatever, it doesn't have to be intense workout. Just get up and get outside, take your dog for a walk around the block, get over to Central Park and enjoy some of the stuff that's going on over there. We have many, many hiking trails around Santa Clarita. One of my favorites is Towsley Canyon, as well as East Canyon, and we get over there to Whitney Canyon. There's a lot of really incredible trails that are out there. And so we live in an area that is so beautiful, there's no excuse not to get out and enjoy it. And so, the reason I stated so much is because it has done wonders for my life and taken my recovery to a whole nother level. today I want to talk to you about, recovery is available to anybody who seeks it. And so if you or someone you love is struggling with substance abuse or mental health issues, please give somebody a call to start you on that recovery process. We live in a time where recovery is more effective, more available, and more accessible to everybody, more than it's ever been in history. And so I want to talk about some of the principles or some of the actions or some of the things that you can do that people have been trying and utilizing and have been working for many, many years now. One of the first things that we have to do in the recovery process oftentimes starts long before we ever step into the recovery process. Everybody who has a problem with any kind of addiction, not just drug and alcohol addiction, but any kind of addiction, at some point in your life, you are going to reach a spot where you start to realize that it is doing damage in your life. The definition of addiction, you can get several different definitions, but the thing that separates somebody who might have get in trouble with drugs and alcohol versus somebody who's truly crossed the line into addiction is addiction has this characteristic that says continued use despite negative consequences. Oftentimes, somebody who has an addictive behavior or a substance in their life will continue the behavior long past where they've started to have problems, even though they don't see those problems themselves. Denial is a huge part of the disease. Once a person has crossed into a line of addiction, the brain doesn't see the drug or the behavior as a problem. The brain sees it as a solution to whatever stressors are exacerbating that problem. And so, people who cross the line into addiction, the drug for them is not, woohoo, this is a party. The drug for them is sort of relief from whatever else that they're going through in life, that they've tried every other method or maybe many methods of changing and are unable to do so. And one of the things that happens when a person puts drugs into their system is that there's such a profound change in the way that you feel and think within such a short period of time that no other form of therapeutic intervention holds a candle to how quick it can work and how strong it is. And so the brain is looking for a way to get out of its uncomfortability as quickly as possible. And when I introduce something into my life that does that, the brain will grab a hold of it and say, we're going to keep doing this at all costs. And so it will defend addiction against any rational thought. And so every time that I start thinking, I might have a problem here, a part of my brain will say, no, but it's doing so much good in your life. Or, wow, things are really getting out of control. Well, maybe you just need to manage better rather than seeing it for what it is. And so before a person gets into recovery, there really needs to be some honest self-searching. There needs to be a measure of surrender and acceptance. Now, a lot of people, I was going to say most people, but I don't know that that's necessarily the truth. But a lot of people don't necessarily see that on their own. They hit some sort of what we would call a bottom. So here's my case, right? I had been arrested many, many times for drugs and alcohol and the behaviors behind drugs and alcohol. And the addiction in me was so very strong that even those consequences right there were not enough for me to go, maybe I should stop. They would always come, my brain would always send me these ideas that would say something like, you have to be more careful. You got to stop hanging around with those people. You can't do it in broad daylight. You need to just manage it to a little bit of drinking or whatever that looked like, rather than say, you should probably quit this. My reaction to drugs and alcohol is not like most people. It is just like the roughly 20% of people who use drugs and alcohol who cross the line into addiction. When I do it, I can't always control how much I'm going to do. When I do it, I can't always control what's going to happen when I do it. When I don't do it, my brain will do anything to get back to it. That is not the reaction that most people have. And so even after many times of being in trouble, I was not willing to accept that drugs and alcohol were my problem until I reached a point where I got arrested one more time, and this very interesting thing happened to me. I was sitting in that cell after, countless years of everything being dedicated to drugs and alcohol, and I was sitting in that cell, and for a moment I had this clear vision. And it was a really clear vision of every problem in my life is centered around drugs and alcohol. And there was this clear vision that I had that I didn't have any idea of how to get out of that I had no way of stopping or controlling that on my own. And it was a really interesting thing that happened because there was this surrender that took place in that cell. And I couldn't have told you that's what it was at the time. I couldn't have told you that I was maybe saying a prayer. I don't know, but I was like, help me, I can't do this. And maybe I was praying, maybe I wasn't, maybe I was just dropping to my knees and surrendering. But what I heard was a voice. And that may sound a little bit funny because I just thought it was an idea that came into my head, right? But the longer that I've stayed sober, it was just this clarity, and that voice came in to that clear moment, and it said to me, everything's going to be all right. And I don't know why I believed it that day, but I believed it. And the most amazing thing happened to me was all of a sudden, the obsession to do drugs was not there anymore. I got bailed out of that situation, and I went to stay with some friends who gave me an opportunity to stay in their house while I cleaned up my act, while I got my recovery process started. And I wasn't coming out of my skin trying to get high. I wasn't thinking of ways to do it. I wasn't trying to manipulate or get across or lie or anything anymore. I was just in this place of, oh my God, I can't do that anymore, and so I reached this point of surrender and acceptance. The acceptance was this. The acceptance was, here I am at 37 years old, and I've achieved relatively nothing in my life because I started doing drugs when I was 10 and had never gathered anything, right? And I didn't know how to do anything. And so the acceptance was, I can't do this by myself. There is no way that I can, because I don't know anything about life. I've spent a lot of my life in jail. I've spent, a lot of my life running and treating people poorly and hustling and doing all that stuff that came around my drug use. And so I had to be in a place where I completely surrendered to the fact that I was powerless over this addiction, that I completely surrendered and accepted the fact that I could not do this on my own. That's not enough. That's the first process in recovery. So wherever you're sitting, that's the first piece of the entire process of recovery, but it has to start there. I'm firmly convinced over the years, after working with countless numbers of people, that the ones who stay clean and sober and change their lives are the ones who have 100% fully accepted and surrendered to the fact that they have this thing called addiction. The ones who struggle are the ones who think, well, maybe, if I just, lived in a different place or had a better job or had more money or stopped hanging around with those people or whatever, when they put their focus on something else being the problem and not accepting that addiction is at the heart of all of the problems, they struggle. because what happens is they'll get clean and sober and their life will get a little bit better. And when their life gets a little bit better, they think to themselves, well, now that my life is better, surely drugs aren't going to be as bad for me as they were. And they start doing drugs or drinking or whatever again. And all of a sudden they find themselves where they were, or sometimes even worse, because now they have stuff in their lives that they can lose, or more stuff, right? And I've seen countless families where over the years, their loved ones will go through that process. And what happens is they build up this hope. The family gets this hope, man, everything's going to be great. Dad stopped drinking, or mom stopped drinking, or brother and sister or whoever has stopped using drugs, and things are going to be so much better. And then they get to, and it is, and then they get to this point where a person thinks, well, I'm doing pretty good right now. I don't need to continue with my recovery. I can live a normal life like everybody else. And they lose the acceptance that they have a thing called addiction that puts them in a position much like acceptance of having diabetes, right? A diabetic cannot get to a place where they are doing really well in their lives by eating right and exercising and watching their blood sugar and going to doctor's visits and doing all the things that keep them healthy. And they get to a point where they feel like they're super healthy and go, you know what? I'm doing so good. I don't need to do any of that stuff anymore. I guarantee you within a short period of time, the diabetic is going to be in a bad spot if they don't continue to manage the lifestyle change that is required to live a life that accentuates the fact that they have diabetes. Same thing happens with addiction. If I'm not willing to accept that I'm going to have to live a lifestyle, we call it a lifestyle disorder, which means that it requires a lifestyle change in order to be successful. If I'm not willing to accept that I have to make a lifestyle change ongoing, and I get to a point where I stop living that lifestyle of recovery, what will happen to me is all of those things, all those stressors and those ideas and the mental health issues and the struggles and all that stuff that created the addiction in the first place are going to catch back up to me, and pretty soon I'm going to be right back in it. And it doesn't always go from 0 to 100. Sometimes it goes to, I'm going to have a couple of beers. And maybe that goes okay, and so I smoke a little bit of pot. And pretty soon I'm using it on a regular basis, and pretty soon I'm so deep into it that I can't get back out of it. So surrender and acceptance is absolutely the first step, but what do you do with that? Okay, so I know that I've got an addiction, right? And so I know that I'm powerless, and so I know that I can't do this on my own, but that's not going to keep me clean and sober. I got to do something with that. When we come back after this break, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what we do, and we're going to start on some of the action steps that we have to take in order to get into successful recovery and then maintain and manage our successful recovery. I'm Bob Sharits. This is the Way Out Recovery Hour. I'll be back in a minute.
The Art Gallery of Santa Clarita Artists Association, located in downtown Newhall on 6th Street between Railroad and Main, features local members' original artwork with changing exhibits every 2 months. Purchase affordable art for your home or as gifts. Open Friday through Sunday or by appointment. Artists wishing to join the SCAA can visit santaclaritaartist.org, come to our free monthly meetings at Barnes & Noble, or stop by the gallery. For upcoming shows, check us out at santaclaritaartist.org. We make visual art visible.
At iLead Agua Dulce, we believe the most important thing a child can learn in school is who they are. Life's real tests are never standardized, which is why we've developed an individual-based curriculum that values exploration, cooperation, and creativity. As our learners grow, so do we. Our tuition-free charter school is currently enrolling grades TK through 7th and adding 8th grade in 2020. Your young learner will be immersed in a unique environment where possibility and self-discovery are at the core of every experience. The Agua Dulce campus features beautiful indoor and outdoor spaces for hands-on inspiration, including a robotics lab, a garden bed, a greenhouse, and a technology-based exploratorium. iLead Agua Dulce is conveniently located on the east side of the Santa Clarita Valley, just off the 14 freeway. Check out our homeschool options too. To schedule a campus tour or learn more about our programs, visit iLeadAguaDulce.org. We're enrolling now. iLead Schools. Free to think, inspired to lead.
I listen to it all day, every day.
Hometown, your hometown station.
I got no excuses.
Welcome back to the Way Out Recovery Hour. I'm Bob Sharits, and I'd like to welcome you if you're just joining us. I'd like to welcome you back if you've been listening. I'm talking about really what a successful process of recovery looks like. And, before the break, I spent some time talking about what I think is the most important component. Over the years, I've seen many, many people who really struggle with coming to a place of acceptance that they struggle with addiction. And people who really push back and they fight any kind of help that is available to them. And so, I want to remind everyone that if you are struggling in the recovery process, that maybe, just maybe, there's a measure of surrender that needs to take place, and there's a measure of acceptance that needs to take place and be deeper than it ever was. We surrender to the fact that we have an addiction in our life, and we accept the fact that we have an addiction in our life, and we surrender also to the fact that of ourselves that we cannot do this. Addiction is an interesting thing in terms of it requires a team around you. It requires help from others. I've never seen anybody, and you can, I guess, send me an email, bob@thewayoutrocoveryscv.com, and tell me I'm wrong if you know somebody who on their own, or you are somebody who on their own has been able to combat an addiction and not need any help. Which leads me into the second piece, which I think on some level is the most important piece, and that is community. One of the things that I want to tell you, that whether you believe it or not, I'm going to give it to you anyway because I know it to be true. You can do this. You have to have a belief that it is possible for you. I didn't necessarily have that belief. I had given up a long time before I actually got sober in my attempts to change. Now, one of the things that I never attempted to do was to completely cut everything out of my life. I attempted to manage it. I attempted to get better jobs. I attempted to move somewhere else. I attempted to surround myself with different people. I attempted all these changes, and they would always lead me back to the same place where I was stuck in a position where drugs became the most important thing in my life. And so I had lost hope. I had lost a belief that it was possible to change. Nobody I knew got clean and sober. Many of them died. Many of them ended up in prison. Many of them ended up hurt or, with horrible family relations. And many of them are out there still struggling with it today. And, and I've been sitting around the rooms of recovery for just over 14 years. And there are a lot of my friends who are still out there doing their thing and struggling, and it's hard for them. And a part of that was I never believed that it was possible for me. What changed that for me was when I started to expose myself to other people who were already in the recovery process. So for me, I ended up in some 12-step meetings. I ended up in an outpatient program. I ended up in a community of people that were in the recovery process. And what's cool about that is that community just kind of lifted me up and took me along with them. All I had to do was show up to those things, and I sat in those rooms and I listened to people's stories. And people were talking about the same types of things that I had been doing that I couldn't control doing. The things that I was doing day after day that I wish I wasn't doing. The way that I was treating people around me and the way that I was unable to meet obligations and step up to my life with everything in me I wish that I could, but I could not bring myself to do it. And I heard people sharing about those same kind of experiences, and they weren't doing that anymore. And so as I sat in a very short period of time, maybe a couple of meetings, I realized that maybe I could do this too. That maybe it was possible for me to be in recovery too. That maybe it was possible for me to change my life and to have this wonderful life where I wasn't stressed out every day and dare I say at times even wanting to kill myself, I could have this life that I saw everybody else have that I wish I could have. And I got this amount of hope, and I got this belief. Having a belief that you can do it is really, really important. Even if you don't have that now, expose yourself and believe that I'm telling you that you can absolutely do it. It is going to take some teamwork. You're not going to be able to do it by yourself. And so, the principle of a belief in myself doesn't just stop there. I have to put that into a practical application. And so not only do I have to believe in myself and the other people that are in recovery, I have to take some suggestions to do some things that are going to help me stay clean and sober. And so I had to learn how to take some actions that I had never done before, and to follow through on those actions so that I could be part of that recovery process. So for me, it looked like, I took some commitments at some of those 12-step meetings, and it's pretty interesting what happens I'll give you an example of a simple commitment, right? I took a coffee commitment, which means that I show up a half an hour early to the meeting, and I put the coffee in the pot, right? And I get it going. And so that when everybody shows up to the meeting, they have coffee. And what happened was I took that commitment, and I was scared to take that commitment. Now, for those of you that just live normal lives and you're thinking to yourself, you're scared to make coffee, the answer is yes, I'm scared to make coffee because I don't know how. And part of my problem is I've spent my whole life being afraid of looking like an idiot or something, I don't know what that's all about, but I stand back and watch the rest of the world, and I wish I could, but I'm not brave enough to take that chance because I'm afraid you're going to laugh at me if I get it wrong. And so I'm scared to death to take that coffee commitment. But there's a guy in front of me who's just had the coffee commitment for the last 6 months, and he says, don't worry about it, Bob. I'm going to show you how to run the coffee machine like it's complicated, right? I laugh at it now, but it wasn't a laughing matter then. It was really serious. And so he shows me how much to put in. He shows me how the button to push, make sure this pot's under here and the thing's open so it doesn't run all over the place. And it's a pretty simple process, right? And I say, okay, I give it a shot. And I do it my first time. Now, this guy doesn't want to give up his commitment because he's had it for the last 6 months, right? But we pass on service commitments in the 12-step world. And so I push the button for the first time at that meeting, and I sit back and I wait for people to come at me and go, oh my God, the coffee's horrible. And none of that happens. And I sat back and I watched people enjoying their coffee, and I thought to myself, that feels pretty good, that I was able to do something that allowed these people to have a little more pleasure in their life. And pretty soon I go from, I'm scared to death to take this commitment, to, hey, I'm the coffee guy. And there's a little bit of pride in that. And at the end of the 6 months of that commitment right there, I didn't want to give it up. And of course, you got to give it up. So here now I'm the professional coffee maker. So I go to the new guy who's now got the commitment. I go, let me show you how it's done, right? So there's this process that takes place in a simple thing like that. Now take that 10 times, because I'm taking other commitments too. It also teaches me how to show up early every week for the meeting. It also teaches me some responsibility. So now I can start to show up for work. So I can start to show up for my other commitments. One of the things that I've always done in my life is I've been chronically late. I'm the guy who somehow thinks they're not going to miss me if I don't show up, or I'm not that important, or it's not that important, or whatever. And one of the things that I pride myself on today is I am on time, and I oftentimes will show up a half an hour early because I think that's really important, and that's part of that lifestyle change. Those are some of the actions that I had to take in trusting other people. I can't think of that stuff on my own. Somebody has to say, look, if you do this, it'll help you stay sober. I'll give you another example, right? Is somebody told me, so I had gotten what they call a sponsor, and a sponsor is somebody who's going to direct me and guide me through the 12 steps. And I got the sponsor, and the sponsor says, why don't you start making your bed every day? And I thought to myself, how is making my bed going to help me stay sober? But I don't listen to my thoughts. I follow the actions and the suggestions, right? And so I go, okay, I'll make the bed. And it only took me about 3 days of making that bed and straightening up my room before I realized why he was asking me to do it. Because on day 3, after cleaning up that room and making that bed, before I walked out the door, I turned around and I looked at it, and it made me feel good. And I had been doing things for so long that did not make me feel good, that made me feel horrible and shameful about myself, that it took a lot. And those little things like that, I turn around and all of a sudden I start to feel good about myself. All of a sudden in my head I go, oh, that's the equation. Like my friend Sammy would say, do right, feel right. And I start doing esteemable actions in my life, like making the bed, all of a sudden I start feeling better about myself. And so all of these things start to add up. Once I'm involved in that process and I'm trusting what everybody else is doing, then I got to start to get down and change and start to take a look at the past, the stuff that I've done. You know, when I first come to 12-step, I'm not doing that on day one. I'm not going to start doing what they call an inventory process, a searching and fearless and moral inventory of the past life that I've had or the things that I've experienced. And because I can't do that right at first. I don't have enough tools. I don't have enough people around me. I'm not solid enough in my recovery, And so after a little while of being there, I don't know, a couple of months or something, I felt good enough about the fellowship, and I felt good enough about the suggestions, and I felt good enough about being able to believe that I could recover, that I was able to start that inventory process. And an inventory, you don't necessarily have to do this process in a 12-step environment. You can do this with a qualified practitioner, like a marriage family therapist or a therapist or a counselor or somebody else to guide you through this process. When I start to write an inventory of my character defects, the mistakes that I've made, the people that I've hurt, the things that have happened to me, the positions that I've put myself in because of my drug use. When I start to do that, it's going to open up some big emotional cans of worms, if you will. And I have to have a team around me, and I have to have support and guidance and direction through all that, or it's going to knock me out of the box. I can't just start writing about the past of my life. I've been spending a lot of time doing drugs, so I don't have to look at that stuff. And all of a sudden I stop doing drugs, and the conditions of my life are glaring in front of me. And so I got to start doing this inventory process. And I got to go back and start writing about, certainly the things that I had done. What's interesting in doing that process is there's a lot of healing that takes place if I can do it with the support that I need. And I'll tell you some of the big ones that happened for me. When I was writing about some of the things that I had done that I wish I had never done, and I'll give you some examples of that. Sometimes when I would drink, I would get violent. Sometimes when I would drink, I would become very reckless, putting other people's lives in danger. Sometimes when I would drink, I would get in fights with the people that I loved, and I would walk away and never come back. Sometimes when I'm drinking and I'm using drugs, I cannot step up as a father, and I have had child services step in and remove my children from the home. And I come into recovery. So what happens when I'm in active addiction is every time I start thinking about that stuff, I can't stand myself for the things that I've done, and I can't stand the way that feels and that shame that holds over me for all of those things that I've done. And the only solution when I'm in active addiction to keep that pushed down far enough where I don't have to feel it is to stay as wasted as I possibly can for as long as I possibly can, so I don't have to look at that stuff. And so this vicious cycle starts to happen, And anybody who uses drugs, even something as innocent as something like marijuana, I'm going to tell you this: if you're a kid who started using marijuana, you automatically become a liar. And I'll tell you why. The minute I started using, and every one of my friends, the minute they started using, most of us started with weed, with pot, with marijuana. The minute we started using, we didn't go home to our parents and say, guess what, Mom and Dad, I started smoking weed today. Isn't that a great thing? Immediately we have this whole second life. We start hiding it, hoping nobody will notice, keeping it on the sly. And so from the very beginning that you're doing it, you're automatically becoming secretive. now times a million times, right? Like every day, all day, it's getting worse. The behaviors are getting worse. And you go from 10 years old to 37 years old. In my case, there's a lot of stuff that happened in there that I don't want to take a look at, right? That I don't want to take a look at. But I have to take a look at that. An amazing thing happened in writing that stuff down and coming to terms with it. The thing that ate me up the worst in that was that I never intended for those things to happen. I would never set out and go, okay, let's get drunk tonight and go damage somebody else's life. Let's get drunk tonight and put somebody else in danger. Let's do some drugs today and walk away from our children. I never, ever, ever wanted that to happen. And in fact, I would go, God, I hope that never happens, right? But as soon as I put something into my system, what happens for me is it's unpredictable. I cannot tell you what's going to happen. I cannot tell you how far we're going to go. I cannot tell you the damage that's going to take place, right? But I can't stop doing it. I'm just hoping it's going to be different this time or the damage will be minimal, right? And one of the things that I realized in that was some of the people in my life that I was so upset at. Namely, specifically my dad. You know, my dad's an alcoholic, admitted by himself, right? And he's in recovery, and so he's doing good today. But when I was a kid, my dad did some of the same things inside of our family that I ended up doing later on. And I was mad at him for that, and I was never taught as a kid. I wish to God when I was 6 years old, somebody would have been talking about alcoholism, because I just thought my dad was a monster. And my dad is absolutely not a monster. My dad is this incredible, wonderful, gifted, kind human being who, when he drinks, unpredictable things happen. And I didn't know that when I was a kid. And I didn't know that alcohol caused that, or addiction caused that, or alcoholism caused that. I just thought he was a monster. And as I'm doing this process and I'm looking at myself, one of the things that begins to happen for me is I begin to realize that maybe my dad didn't mean to do those things either. Maybe he was under the influence of his addiction and being driven by this thing that is so powerful he can't pull away from it, and he didn't mean to do those things either. And so in my looking at my own inventory, I forgave him. And I was able to go back to him in the amends process. So as I'm doing this inventory, one of the things that comes out of it is, I'm not absolved of all the damage that I've done. There's no excuse for that stuff. It's not okay to do it. And if I could take it back, I absolutely would. And on some level, I can. So part of this process is also going back and repairing the damage. And so I've had some opportunities to go back to those people and to say, if there's anything I could do to change it, I would absolutely do that. Is there anything that I can do now to help repair the damage, and be willing to do whatever they ask me to do? And a lot of times it's just being kind and loving today. We can see that you're in recovery and you're not doing those things anymore. And so just keep living this life, right? My mom said to me when I went back and made my amends to my mom, what she said to me with tears in her eyes is, all I've ever wanted is for you to be okay. And now that you're in the recovery process, I can see that you're okay. Me and you are good, right? And me and my dad have ongoing conversations about how much we love each other and how much we forgive each other. And that's a really cool thing, because that's not just, just doesn't happen in a snap of a finger. It's an overnight process, right? So as I do this inventory, I start to realize some things about myself and some of the damage that's been done. I was never treated for my mental health issues when I was a kid. I'm the hyperactivity disorder kid, probably call it ADHD now or something like that. Never treated for that stuff. I've had severe depression my whole life, never treated for that stuff. I've had a lot of trauma and neglect and abuse, inside of the home. When I was a kid, 7 years old, I was sexually molested. I never dealt with that kind of stuff. And in my inventory process, I start to take a look at that. And my sponsor, who I'm doing this process with, I'm getting, for the first time in my life, I'm writing that stuff down and I'm sharing it with somebody else. After that thing happened when I was 7 years old, I never told anybody about that. Come to find out, it happened to my brother too. Didn't know that because I never talked about it. As this stuff starts to come out, right, like I've been hiding that my whole entire life, and I finally share it with another human being, a man in a 12-step program called my sponsor. I start to share it with him, and he asked me, he said, what did you do with that experience? And it was like a lightning bolt. I swear to God, I had never seen this before, because the inventory process is a discovery process. What I saw in that was, what I did with that experience was I pushed everybody away in my life from that point forward. I ran away from any kind of intimacy, any kind of closeness, any kind of vulnerability. You are never going to get close enough to me to do to me what happened to me that day when I was a kid. And so I pushed everybody out of my life. And when I look at that experience and what happened in that experience and afterwards, how can you ever have a healthy relationship after that? And so every relationship I've ever been in, I've sabotaged, and everything good in my life, I've thrown away, because that's what I thought I was up until that point. So I ask him, I say, okay, how do I change that? If that's the truth about me, right? And I've been doing that from the time I was 7 years old to the time I'm 37 years old when I'm taking this inventory. How do I change that? And he said to me, he said, Bob, you got to start letting people in. Well, how do you do that, right, if you don't know how to do it? And I'll tell you that the fellowship and the community that's in the recovery world has very similar experiences to that, and we support each other in that. And so what happened once again was I surrendered myself to this process of recovery, and you guys showed me how to do that. And I started to have those intimate relationships and that vulnerability in my life, and I started to, dare I say, make amends for that stuff that happened when I was a kid. That's the power. Those are some examples of the power of that inventory process. You know, after that, after I do that inventory process, I got to start living differently in my life. I can't be that guy that runs on the character defects of all those things that have happened to me or all that shame that I carry around. I start to live my life differently, and I start to change the character who I am. And I get rid of the character defects, and I keep the character assets. And I try to nurture those on a daily basis. And so the process continues every day by taking a personal inventory of how am I doing today? Am I hurting anybody? Do I owe anybody amends? Am I trying to do the best that I possibly can? And what we do is we shoot for the bullseye and get as close as we possibly can, and we keep ourselves clean in the recovery process every day. In that, what happens is the tools that I need, like the exercise and the eating right and all that kind of stuff, what happens in that process is my spiritual life gets better. Because everything is tied into everything, and you call it God, call it whatever you want, but there is this power that connects us all. And if I'm tapped into the world, I'm tapped into that power, and if I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to do, that grows. And that is part of the process, is growing my spiritual connection to the rest of the world. And at the end of the day, what do we do with all that so that we can stay in that recovery process? At the end of the day, the cool thing is it's not about me. It's about giving it away to somebody else. And so we learn all of that stuff in the process so that I can be the guy sitting in the room when the guy like me walks in to his first meeting and says, I'm scared and what do I do? And I can say, I don't know, but here's what I did, right? So, that's a window into what successful recovery looks like. The formula is the same. It's a whole lot of work. It ain't going to be easy, but it is a simple process, and it just takes a daily consciousness. Let somebody else guide you in that recovery process, and I want you to know that absolutely 100% you can recover. I'm Bob Sharits. This is the Way Out Recovery Hour. If you have any questions about this, email me, bob@thewayoutrocoveryscv.com. We'll see everybody next week.